Live. Oh, now we're live. That's as easy as it goes live here. Welcome back to the Casually Hardcore Gaming channel. I am your host, Nick, followed by other hosts.
Colin.
Eric.
Welcome back to our second discussion talk show, following up on the Xbox Game Showcase. We've been hearing so much about the hype of what Microsoft has behind closed doors. They bought, several studios, so finally going to kind of get a taste, what they've been doing. Obviously, the pandemic delays things, but from like an overall preview, what did y'all think? Were you excited by it? Were you intrigued by the offerings they had, or were you disappointed?
I would say it felt, I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but I also wasn't excited. It was kind of, there were highs and lows. I think the most interesting thing to me was actually in the pre-show that Balan Wonderland seemed really interesting to have kind of a Mario Galaxy, Mario Odyssey-esque platformer coming to Xbox.
Yeah, Colin, what about you, man?
One of the things, I'm a PlayStation player, and I was really going into that thinking that it was going to be kind of a pitch on why you should go to Xbox for the next generation. And one of the things that really intrigued me was the Xbox Game Pass, how they were trying to come up with kind of like a Netflix for their own games. I mean, PlayStation now has the older games that you can do something similar with if you do a subscription, but the opportunity to get like brand new games seemed really intriguing to me. And didn't seem like they touched as much on that as I wanted to. So that definitely seemed interesting, but it seemed to me like they wanted to kind of pump out the titles that a lot of people were familiar with Forza, Halo, and Fable coming back.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
totally agree. I think both of y'all's points were phenomenal. The first part, pre-show, Dragon Quest, first time coming to Xbox. That was a big deal. Also coming to Game Pass. I can't remember the name, Balloon World, or was it Balloon?
The
platform
that I was talking about was Balan Wonderland.
Yes, Balan Wonderland. Yes, I don't know why I said Balloon. That's why Balloon Balan. That game was super cool. I was kind of surprised that those titles were actually left as pre-showcase versus showcase because Microsoft's really had a bad rap in Japan, and those are some pretty big, Japanese titles, or at least, Eastern Asia. Like that's pretty big, and you really only had Phantasy Star Online 2 separate game digital upgrade. Wasn't too clear about that, so that was interesting that they left those out. But to your point too, Colin, the Game Pass stuff was interesting. Every single game, I think, besides the Crossfire X, I think it had like a little small text that said campaign not included, but multiplayer is. Like, whatever. I don't know what that means. I guess we'll find that out. But yeah, I definitely agree with both of y'all's takes. Like, it was a little underwhelming. Exciting to see Game Pass titles, it's coming into the added value. And also curious why some of those pre-show games were not, in the main conference. So, heading off in the conference part, looking at Halo, there's a lot of controversy that's come out of the showcase where you have the graphics, like you have the monkey meme with the brute face. I don't know if y'all seen that or not yet, but that's literally everywhere. It's not a good meme. It's a very bad meme. It's not exciting. So, when you saw that gameplay, what was something you thought about? What was their first reactions to seeing Halo coming out the gate?
The first thing that I thought, and it took me a while to wrap my head around this, but it felt like it played more like Destiny. It didn't feel like Halo, because Halo's much more tight corridors. It's a war. You progress your way through, fighting through corridors, through ships, through valleys. Halo 1, 2, 3 are all about your war with the Covenant. I mean, even on Halo 4, it's Chief going through basically these trenches and these Forerunner buildings, and then in 5 you have Locke fighting with Arbiter in these battlefields, and then Chief fighting with the fighting for Cortana, and there's these battles that are moving you through. Whereas in Infinite, it felt way more open world in that there wasn't really a war. It was just a skirmish, and that, like I said, it was more like Destiny, where there wasn't this opponent that you were trying to overcome. There wasn't this goal that you were trying to surmount. It was just survive. Mm-hmm. And it felt like that there I don't know how this will play out. I'm not going to say whether or not it's a good or a bad choice, but it felt like a little bit of a shift in soul of Halo, and perhaps it's going to be a good thing. The Covenant's gone. The Covenant's gone, and a new threat has taken its place. So a new type of combat might come out. Again, maybe they are kind of going back to their namesake and evolving combat once more. But it didn't feel like traditional Halo.
Agreed. That's 2 points I want to get back to you on that. The Destiny part and the story part. I think those are two big things. Colin, what about you? Was like some of your first impressions?
Definitely Destiny. The whole Destiny point of view was definitely one of the first things that popped into my head. But it seemed to me like the big pitch towards the avid Halo fans was the kind of the graphics, trying to take that back to what a classic Halo would look like, and then trying to put their own spin on what a current Halo. What the current Halo they wanted to see, which was kind of adapting that open world, which is frankly a pretty popular single player game format historically, but really just nothing too special. So like in the 5 minutes that we saw, of course, but
yeah, totally agree. So the Destiny part, that's the big one. So one part was that they had this 10-year plan coming out. Remember the 10-year plan that Bungie had for Destiny? You can really see how that played out. Really, Destiny 2 might be going there a little bit with their split with Activision, but Destiny 1, your character you had for 3-something years, and then there's like, oh, say ya, move on to the next one. Thanks for playing. And I hear that 10-year, I'm soured by it. So that to me scares me. And then you look at 343's trends from 4 to 6 or Infinite. 4 copied Call of Duty quite a bit. 5 copied some of those older games like Republic Commando. Some of those it really didn't have its own identity. It had a lot of bits and pieces. And then Infinite looks like Destiny. I think that's the hardest part is like when you look at the coalition with Gears, they've really found their way. They've really fine-tuned the formula. Whereas 343 is like, oh, this is a shiny pebble. I'm gonna go chase it this time. Like that looks really cool. So that definitely is concerning, and I'm glad we all hit on that part. Is like it being very Destiny. Like I'm not exactly sure, what the missions is here. And I think that transitions into the story really well. Is I'm very much in Halo lore. I have half the books are over there behind the screen here, in the comics, in the games, and I have no clue what the hell is going on. I'm so confused.
That's something I want to touch on. The fact that you are confused concerns me because I don't know a single person who knows Halo lore quite like you do.
Yeah, if you play the Halo Wars series, which is a spin-off RTS, Halo Wars 2 introduced the Banished. And the way they're introduced is that they were a Covenant faction that got split off because of just some bad blood without diving into story details too much. And they're the reason why the Covenant didn't overrun the UNSC because they were just so big. So the Covenant was basically split into 2, fighting UNSC and fighting Banished, and then eventually 3rd fighting the Flood. So that was kind of like their story. And there are some apparently some references in Halo 2 to where there's some other enemy they're fighting, and you think it's the Flood, but that's like their keyhole into the Banished is like, oh, actually we're talking about the Banished. Like that's just clever writing. Or really great foreshadowing. I don't really know. I mean, they had the Banished as their plate for a long time, but that's how they're introduced. But their leader was Atriox. And then when you go into this and the guy is saying, hey, in the will of Atriox, okay, so is he dead? That's confusing to me. 2, into Halo 5, Cortana is basically killing everyone. Where is she at now? 3, you look at the Covenant enemy types, like the elites and all the grunts are usually like red. That's their theme is red because they've been banished, quote unquote. They look like Covenant. So, where are the Covenant still around? Are the created faction still around? Did the Banished just kill everyone and now everyone's the Banished now? And then, what happened to the Infinity? The Spirit of Fire was a ship lost in time before any of the Halos started, and they kicked the crap out of the Banished. And they don't even have any of the cool stuff from 5. And then you have Infinity, which is like this largest ship ever. It's just gone. So I don't know. I am just so very confused. That thing really, to sum it all up, was very disappointed. Thought they could do better. And it's kind of sad to see where Halo's at, because Halo Infinite's really going to be making or break it for the franchise. If it tanks, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But, we've already spent. Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to say about Infinite is I was reminded of a quote by Dave Filoni, who, when making The Mandalorian, Dave Filoni said he didn't want to be inspired by Star Wars. He wanted to be inspired by the things that inspired Star Wars. And it feels a lot like with 343's takeover of the Halo franchise is they're not going back to what inspired Halos 1, 2, and 3. They aren't really looking at what made Halo Halo. They're like, hey, look, here's Halo. It's successful. Let's put our spin on it. And so that's why there's this shift, like what you were saying, where Halo 4 felt very Call of Duty. Halo 5 felt very Republic Commando. Halo Infinite feels very Destiny. Is that it doesn't feel Halo because they're not realizing what made Halo in the first place. Was big, kind of almost a hopeless war with really deep, rich lore that gave a lot of people a lot of things to work with as they played.
Yep. And a kick-ass multiplayer.
Yeah. And it just kind of feels now where it's like, you're chief, go kill things.
Yep. And it's probably why ODST, some of those spinoffs or Reach felt so good, because they were unique takes, but they weren't the main franchise. So something to think about too. I know we talked a lot about Halo. There's a ton of games that were showcased. Colin, what was, looking at the showcase, what was your favorite game coming out of it? Something that was like, wow, this is something I'll definitely check out, if it comes out, or just something I'll keep on the top of my radar.
I would have to say Forza. I like racing games personally. Definitely a big Need for Speed guy. Played a little bit of GTA racing, but let's take that with a grain of salt. But really, just that game, it looks so good on the next gen potential, and really that was my main takeaway. Really, the other games this goes back to another point about the underwhelming nature of the presentation, was that they kind of tried to pitch a lot of indie games, and none of them really stood out to me as much as like the other big titles. So Forza was definitely the one that
awesome
stood out the most.
Yeah, racing games are huge. It's curious to see. This is like the first time in several years that Forza is not annualized. So I'm curious to see, will Horizon 4 get an update? Will it get an expansion? Or will they just kind of have a gap year and let Gran Turismo come back and take the spotlight? Guess we'll find out. Eric, what about you? What was kind of your king game? What was the game for you?
This kind of actually goes back to something I was touched on earlier, where I was really expecting something to stand out and really wow me, because again, I'm traditionally a PlayStation guy, and so I was looking for that game that they were going to pitch and say, here's the new thing. Like you have Halo, you have Fable, all that stuff. Those are great titles. I'm not going to say that, but just here's this new thing that we're throwing out there that's really going to bring fans from other consoles in. And I didn't really see any of that. The one that did stand out to me was the Awoken or the Awaken game. But again, it was like a 30-second trailer. And so it seemed interesting, and I got a lot of Oblivion vibes from that game, and so that one stood out to me. And then I'm kicking myself because I didn't write down the title of it, but the one where it was essentially Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh, yep. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Like, it's just like a weird, like a weird like Mosh, or oh gosh, what's that game called? I know what you're talking about. It's like a tiny little indie kind of game where he's shorter.
Yeah. That
Oh.
one was the one that jumped out at me of like, I'm not normally one for like the survival building type of games.
Oh, Grounded.
Yes, Grounded. Thank you.
Grounded. Yes.
Yeah, the second that one hit the screen, because I really liked it because even the developers didn't seem to take it too seriously. With
the Cyberpunk.
Where it's like, you can work together with your friends, or you can feed them to spiders. And it felt fun, and it felt alive, and it felt like something really light, where it was just like, here's this thing that you can make what you want of it. It felt like a game that was made for the players. Of we're not rehashing a title. We're not trying to pump a lot into, graphics or into like this insane new engine or something like that. It was just, here's something light and fun that we didn't even take super seriously, and it felt more like a gift to gamers as opposed to something that developers wanted to just cash in on.
You nailed 2 games coming from Obsidian out of 3 Obsidian games showing off in that. It's crazy to think that they're working on Outer Worlds expansions, updates, Grounded, and then obviously I think Awaken or Awoken. Where it also, fun fact, that game takes place in the Pillars of Eternity universe. Cool little thing they're tying into that. But Obsidian was a great get for Microsoft. I mean, there's so many Obsidian games that I absolutely love. So no matter, even if you're not an Xbox fan or not, Obsidian was just a massive grab for any industry or any title really publisher that would have got them. So I'm glad Microsoft did, because they come up with a lot of good titles, and a lot of those little smaller projects like Grounded probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that that publisher backing. So I'm a huge Xbox guy, way opposite of the PlayStation guys here. I was disappointed entirely. I think to your point, Eric, I didn't really see that WoW game. Like the PlayStation Showcase had really phenomenal games, just back to back to back to back, and even games that you expected, like the Horizon Dawn sequel. But stuff like the Miles Morales take on Spider-Man was really cool, or Little Big Planet coming back in a very refreshing way. It was exciting. Or Ratchet and Clank coming back. They skipped almost an entire generation, almost, right? So, or they did. I don't know if there was Ratchet and Clank on PS4. I'm not exactly sure. But stuff like that was cool. And then Microsoft was like, okay, I know about Halo, I know about Forza. Fable's been leaked like crazy. Obsidian has some cool titles, but it's like, State of Decay with that, that Internet trailer. I was like, wow, this could be cool. And it's like, oh, it's State of Decay 3. It's like, oh, zombies. Yay. Woohoo, more of this. I mean, it could be something really cool, but I mean, we'll see. Who knows?
Don't want to cut you off, but just something I wanted to point out was the games that people seem most excited about in our group, that Awaken, the State of Decay. I mean, even State of Decay is a good game. Let's It's going to be zombies, but let's face it, who doesn't love shooting a zombie every once in a while?
Right.
And Fable, all those big ones, those only had 30-second. Those felt like those felt like the shortest. They had the shortest screen time in the announcement, in all those things. So that even the things that people are hyped about got the least attention.
Yeah, I agree. For a platform that really has a bad reputation for its first-party offerings, I was really surprised how little time or how little they had to showcase that. I know they had really hyped it up, but it was only an hour, which was less than Sony's. Sony's, I think, was an hour and a half. I know Sony showcased the console and had some of those little teasers, very, very interesting teasers throughout. They probably, beefed up that time a little bit or padded it out. But it was kind of interesting to see that Microsoft really didn't show gameplay or didn't really talk about these titles more. And they're like, oh, we have more in August. So, maybe next month we'll find out, the price, maybe more acquisitions, because there's some rumors that they're acquiring more. Maybe they're buying third-party IP to become first-party. That could be a whole new war. I guess we'll find more of that stuff out. But to kind of wrap it all home, I'll start with you, Colin, first. Out of scale 1 to 10, what would you rate the conference in its entirety?
I will say this: I've never purchased an Xbox before, so I was kind of watching that, kind of just trying to get like a blank, kind of watching it with a blank slate, and really just nothing stood out. Like Eric said, nothing stood out to me as like a PlayStation player that would make me want to say, "Hey, I want to switch over to Xbox." And so I would give it like 6. I'll give it a hard 6.
Confident 6 out of 10. I appreciate it. Eric, what about you? What was your rating?
Yeah. Going off of that same metric of, I'll give this 2 metrics, because I've had a lot of people in my life who have been close to who have had Xboxes, and so I know that the games are good and stuff. So for someone who has had an Xbox to be like hyped about getting the next console and continuing their journey, that one I would say would be probably like a 7 out of 10. Like, there's a lot of interesting titles that they're hinting at coming out, which would make me want to continue. I'd feel stronger about continuing. But as a PlayStation player, predominantly, I would give it like a 3 or a 4 out of 10, simply because it does not make me want to go buy it. It doesn't make me want to even add an Xbox into my repertoire of consoles, let alone swap over. So from that standpoint of like a conversion rate, I think they failed entirely.
Yeah, no, I agree. As a big Xbox guy, I mean, obviously I have most of the consoles here. I would be harder on. I give it a 5 out of 10. A little bit below Colin. Definitely more generous of the 3 here. But the gameplay for Halo, which is my bread and butter, disappointed me. Left me more confused. Left me disappointed. Knowing that Forza is not coming out anytime soon was disappointing to really hear. Hearing that Everwild doesn't even have gameplay yet. That was all concept demo. I was like, okay, so where is that game in the state? It was just a lot of question marks. A lot of the games they showcased didn't really wow me. It wasn't really exciting. So I have to kind of wait till August to see. But to your point, like if you weren't an Xbox person, I don't think the show would have got you on the train. I think the price point is going to be what's going to get you on the train. If they say, hey, $399, $299, $100 below PlayStation, that might be, the flip effect of what happened this generation. So I guess that might be more alluring in the long run. But PlayStation definitely had better first parties. So I'm disappointed, but excited to see more. There's always more room for stuff. But yeah, I guess we'll kind of drop it on that note as we kind of run over a little time here. But thank you guys so much for joining. Always stay tuned to Casually Hardcore on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for the latest and greatest in gaming news and discussions. Always a pleasure to have you on board. Again, I'm Nick.
I'm Colin.
I'm Eric.
Thank you so much for joining us.